I found it interesting is, I guess, about 2012 when I was researching names for Marketing Brainology, the term neuromarketing was not very prevalent in the U.S., except for you have really made it famous for the last 25 years.
Not quite that long,
Not
but
quite
about
that.
15 or
15
so.
years?
Yeah, going on 15.
But the term is very popular outside the United States, and I know we've kind of talked about that before, but now I think I see a bit of a turning point where Ad Age and some others are saying, look, it's not just a fly-by-night trend, it's actually here, and companies are using it.
Yeah, well, Ad Age has notoriously been skeptical of neuromarketing. And that stems in part from academics being skeptical of the field, because some of the early claims of the first neuromarketing service providers were kind of out there and weren't necessarily always backed up by solid science. And as a result, it was perceived by many academics to be as a kind of a pseudoscience, and they wouldn't really get near it. So that had a couple of effects. One is people did talk a little bit about consumer neuroscience as being a more disciplined version of neuromarketing, a more acceptable academic name for it. But just recently, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, Ad Age published an article that finally acknowledged that, okay, there is something to this neuromarketing thing. We're seeing some actual verifiable results come out of it. The big brands are using it. Smaller brands are starting to use it. And so they did acknowledge that it had some merit. And jumping back to the behavioral science thing, there was just recently an announcement for Nielsen Consumer Neuroscience, who's the biggest provider of those kinds of service. And they said that they are not exactly repurposing or maybe rebranding their staff of 20 MD and PhD neuroscientists as trainers and educators in behavioral science. So they are seeing the confluence of these fields as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's not one or another. I mean, it's a spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
And it depends on what you're trying to do. We use a lot of the 16 sensor EEG. And on the spectrum, it's not 64 sensor like I used to use when we had the original supplier we worked with PepsiCo. But 16 sensor is still medical grade. It does a really good job of emotional measurement, which is what the things that we're trying to figure out.
Right, that's the kind of information you need to make decisions.
By doing 16 sensor versus 64 sensor, it's also allowed an opportunity for other companies that maybe couldn't have afforded it. So I think the cost of it has come down, and the usage occasions are a little bit more defined on what's realistic.
Well, you hit on the key point there, Michelle. The big news in neuromarketing is that it's getting more affordable.